Welcome, 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 everybody. Today, it's great to have MEB here this week. Good to see all of you, and we are excited about what we're going to offer today. We are having a topic around navigating stress behaviorally, especially during COVID-19, because we know we're experiencing some of that, as those of us here at the Know Your Talents team have. And I'll just divulge a little bit about how this experience has shown up for me behaviorally. But we're just going to talk high level through the high traits and just talk a little bit about the pros and cons of those traits and things that we might expect to see from people. And, you know, this is, as we all know, kind of an unprecedented time that we're all dealing with. We're dealing with issues like, you know, in some cases, people are losing business. Of course, you know, we can't find toilet paper when we need it. People are having to adjust to work in a different kind of environment, whatever that might look like. And it's just also different for us. And so we just know behaviorally that some of us are going to get angry, some of us might shut down, some of us just might become that must be right, just might show up even more than it normally does. And this is just to help us understand why that might happen and what we can be aware of if we experience in ourselves, understand that, and just know what that might do to others as they experience it from us as well. So that's really where we're headed in this conversation today. So thanks, MEB, for being on. This is my profile. This is a very recent survey that I took just within the last 2 weeks. And for those of you that know me and have seen this before, my patience and my conformity go back and forth. And in this particular profile, which happened about, I took this survey about 2 weeks in to working remotely. And in this instance, my conformity shot up to be my highest trait. And that has a lot to do with me trying to gain control and get an environment that's right for me to work in, I believe. So this is what I'm looking like now. And I always get a little bit nervous when that conformity shows up as the highest. And I have experienced those feelings, and I'll talk more about that when I get to the conformity trait. But it's just been really interesting to see how behavior acts during these types of situations. So I'm going to start a little bit just talking really high level about the strengths of each of the traits, the 4 behavioral buckets. And so just as we talk about and refresh on these strengths, you know, we know that people with high dominance, they are decisive, they're direct when they communicate, they're forward thinking, they like change. I don't know about this kind of change, but they generally like change. They have a really intense drive to push forward and get things done. And the key thing here is just remembering that they really do like challenges. And so as we talk about what those challenges do, it's a real positive thing in this situation. But communication-wise, teller authoritative, really like to say it like it is, say it once, and have it happen. So we know that with this particular behavior, they are about taking charge, and they will say what they need to say and not give much clarity around it. So meaning they may tell somebody what to do, but they may not really come back with much of an explanation. And it can be maybe intense at the time. They have an intense desire to keep things moving and pushing forward through the discomfort. So they may not stop and acknowledge it a lot, but just keep pushing to keep things moving forward. And may not want a lot of resistance if they make a recommendation. So this is where you might feel that intensity come out even more if they're trying to encourage something different process and people are resisting that. They just want to say it, expect others to follow their direction. I had to laugh a little bit yesterday. I had a customer that I was talking with, and she was sharing with me that she's always worked remotely. However, due to the quarantine, she has been spending more time with her husband, who is an all D profile. And we had a good laugh about it because she shared with us how intense he is and how he is struggling so much because he has no control over anything. And they had made a purchase on a new house and it closed 2 weeks ago, but here they are unable to move forward. And she said, I always know that I've known that that's his trait, but to see it in action and see his frustration with not having control of the situation has been really intense. She did say he was packing really good boxes and that they would be very well organized and great for their move. But it was just funny to hear her talk about that, just even in a personal aspect, how it was impacting her and him. It was really funny. We had a good chuckle. But some things to think about when we think about pros for that high D, especially in situations like this, is that they see that challenge and they just go for it, right? They are just able to assess what needs to be done, put things in place. And when others of us, like myself, who might get stuck in the weeds, cannot see that clear path to what does this all look like and what kind of action do we need to take, these are the folks that can lead us through. And we absolutely need that in these kind of scenarios. So that's a real positive mode. Some of the things to think about, cons, as we might say it here, you know, if they feel like they can't be in control of those situations, they just might move forward anyway with their own steps, with their own actions, and maybe not really think about what kind of impact that might have on others. And maybe, again, not vocally speak enough about that, what they are attempting to do. They just keep moving forward. They may not look back either and think about what could be learned from the experience, and they just keep that really strong stance about what they want to do. And sometimes that might create a little conflict and resistance from others, because you'll feel that intensity even a little more in situations like we're experiencing here. So some things to think about, just recommendations for, you know, those that work with these type of folks, or those of you that are managers. You know, just keep in mind that because they're really trying to gain or retain or maintain control of something, a situation, knowing that right now nobody has control over anything, just let them do their thing. Let them let off their steam, you know, cool down at some point, get refocused. And the biggest piece of advice I can say here is don't take it personal. Just recognize that that's what they're feeling and that's what they're dealing with. And as they can move past it, they will probably stop and think back. But at that moment, we've just got to get out of their way and let them deal with that in their way and not take it personal. Biggest tip I could possibly give. And, you know, just at Know Your Talents, we experienced a little of that on our own internal team, and just had to stop for a second and think, why is this happening? And, oh, that's really not about me. So it was a good awareness for us. Sarah, I see Sarah nodding her head. Yes. Yeah, so as we move to the extroversion trait, you know, these folks are really our cheerleaders. They are the ones that really inspire us and motivate us, and they coach. They're great at coaching. They're really trusting, and of course they're people focused, and so they are about how is this impacting other people. And out of all traits, they might be the ones mostly thinking about, oh my goodness, what is this doing to everybody else around me? So really strength-wise and thinking about people and what it's doing to them, you know, just to think about when they communicate, that they've got that style of being persuasive, you know, and super optimistic. So when we think about that high extroversion, they are optimistic. And so as they share their optimism, sometimes that messaging may come across a little bit unclear. Like we might be going, why are they so excited about this? This isn't anything to be excited about, their idea, right? So they're just trying to keep that optimism and push things forward. But also you might feel some of this fearfulness of maybe failing at what's going on in this current kind of environment. And they may not be seen as competent because you might see them feeling really anxious about what's happening. And this is where they might tend to just take things a little bit more personal at times. So it's just paying attention to that. Sometimes with that high extroversion, they might just speak up and have things to say without really having all the information. And so those of us that are looking for details and specifics, you know, sometimes we might look at that and think, well, that was just a waste of our time and our energy because we didn't need to hear all of that. But it's just an awareness of where they are in that moment. They also might just really assert their personal beliefs in a really excitable way. And when that happens, they might just block others from feeling safe and open. So again, if this happens to be your trait, it's just an awareness of thinking about others, right? And how we communicate to them may impact them and really block them from being able to feel like they can open up and be in a trusting environment. So some things that are really positive about that is that these are our cheerleaders, of course. They're really positive. They're the ones that are approachable. More than likely, they're the ones that we want to go to get that affirmation. It's going to be okay. They're cheerleading us forward. But they're also able to really create an energy to keep us moving forward. They've got that excitement and that optimism, and they just bring it. And it helps those of us that might be sitting back a little bit hesitant. They're also really willing to see new opportunities. I have been blown away at the things that I'm hearing creatively that people are doing in spite of the situation. And I think that's partly one of the strengths from the high extroverts is that they just see things as opportunities and find a way to work around it and make it happen. So absolutely a pro there. They're also really have the ability to persuade and get others to come along and get that engagement from people. So real pros in that respect. Some things, cons that we might say, they still will feel the need to be recognized for their contributions. And sometimes, especially in this environment, those of us may not be thinking about that. So they may still be feeling that, well, hey, what about me? Where's my recognition? And just recognize that and give it to them if they feel they need it. They may have a really strong invested need for their status and, again, for that recognition. And that just at times can create conflict really and resistance from others because we're thinking really not now, but it's real, right? It's just real to who they are. And then lastly, they might just completely shut down, especially if they don't feel like they're being recognized or appreciated for what they're doing. So it's again important to recognize that with them. Some recommendations, I was kind of chuckling. I heard somebody say the other day, I was listening online and they said, during this time period, we've got extroverts and we've got introverts, and used the word introvert, which we don't normally do, but I'm just quoting him. And he said, those people that are extroverts feel like they've died and gone to hell, and those of us that are introverts feel like we've died and gone to heaven. And I think that's just so relative of how these folks that are high E's, they're just so much about being around people, and they really lose their energy when they can't, and they get uplifted from people. So when they're away from them, they're missing them. And so you might really experience some of that, what we call a backup style, some verbal attack or over communication, just because that's the zone that they're in. And I just think the key thing to remember here is if we're on the receiving end of that, which I've caught myself in the receiving end of that, we just have to let those words fly, and it goes back to not taking it personal. And just say to them, you know what, I can tell right now's not the time. Let's just reconnect later and have time to talk later after you've thought about that a little bit, when we can continue the conversation. So it's just really being aware of how those reactions may come out from that behavior. And I do want to open this up at the end and get some feedback. And I know Sarah's got some of her own personal stuff she's going to share too. So bear with us here. So pace and patience. We know that these folks are generally the ones that are good listeners. They really want to listen and help people and listen to what people have to say. They like things to stay the same. Woo! The talk about tough. I can relate to this one. Things are not the same right now in any way, shape, or form. So keeping status quo, a little bit hard for people with that high patience. They also, though, when we think about strength, these are the folks that are those instructors and teachers. They're good at that. They like doing that. They like staying with people until they get it. They also like collaboration. And I think about, in this instance, I think about just myself. I have low dominance, low extroversion, but I do have really high patience. And I miss the collaborative opportunity to work with people and see them every day and be able to connect and collaborate on things in a different way. So I saw myself really missing that in the first couple of weeks. Also very humble and perceptive. They're sitting back and paying attention to what's going on with other people and in their environment, and paying a lot of attention to that. So they're just kind of sitting back, taking it all in. They're also a key piece to the strengths for high patients is that persistence, just that willingness to continue, push forward, keep things moving as much as possible, keep things normal as much as possible. So key strengths there. Communication for them is casual, careful as we call it, and we know that there's a real appreciation for stability and consistency with high pace. Again, we know we're not getting a lot of that until we settle into a routine with this new way. But they need time to get through the discomfort and process what's happening. I experienced something that I had probably never experienced before, and I had to stop and think about why and relate it back to my behavior. But I literally had a couple of weeks of it was the discomfort and trying to process through what was happening, why it was happening, what I was going to do about it, and literally had moments of just real shutdown because I couldn't process it. I couldn't comprehend exactly what was going on and why I was feeling the way I was. So I think that's important to recognize in others. And as leaders, it's not okay to shut down, but I actually did it. And really, I feel like at times let my team down because I wasn't there for them at that moment. Even more so, we may not want to hold others accountable. We naturally don't want to do that, but even more so during this time. We don't want to intrude in others. We don't want to hold people to standards because things aren't the same. So that will feel even stronger and maybe more intense. We may feel the need to do more and take on more, right? So again, it goes back to that same thing for high patients. Yes, I'll do it. Yes, I'll do it. But at the same time, recognizing how much we already have on our plate and how we're feeling through this change of everything that's going on. So just being aware. So pros, I think, able to accomplish tasks because of their patience to wait for things. That's a pro for sure. And once we put that in perspective, I had to get it in perspective, get unstuck, and then realize that I do have that patience to continue to move forward on things and keep things methodical. I just had to identify a new system in which to do that, right? The other pros really are that people with high patience are going to take time to listen to the concerns of others. And during this time, we need to find people that we can trust to be able to share how we feel and be able to open up about that and have conversation with people. And really, we'll be able to set up routines for other people. So I couldn't have done that in the first 2 weeks. I think I'd probably be better at it now, just helping others kind of get into a mode of setting up that routine and keeping things going forward. But that's a real strength for people with that high patience trait. Some cons, this is so true. If you have people that you are managing on your team with this trait, just know that even more so now than ever, they want a strong leader. They want somebody who's leading the charge and providing them with direction. And direction we need direction anyway, but even more so at a time when things are so chaotic. So you're going to feel that. They're going to look to you probably more and look for that direction from you. Want assurances before taking action, again, because it's all so foreign and so new, depending on what's going on in the situation. They want assurance that, yes, that's the step we need to take. That's the direction we need to go. And if they aren't getting it, you might feel people resisting and slowing things down. But again, they're just looking for that assurance that they're moving in the right direction. And it's really key that they get that now. We'll avoid anything that feels confrontational. Man, oh man, yeah, and just avoid it and shut down. True statement. So just being aware that right now, those folks that you have that you're working with that high patience, just keep that harmonious, peaceful environment as much as you can for them to avoid that from happening so that they aren't just shutting down. Some recommendations, goes back to being treated with fairness and kindness. We know high patience people like to be approached in that way. And so being kind when approaching that's the biggest thing to take away from this, and just recognize that they want that kind of approach. If not, they may take it really, really personal and again go back to the shutdown. But just give them as much information and direction as you possibly can to support their efforts and what they're going through and what they're trying to accomplish will be really helpful for them. High conformity. Okay, so strengths here: maintain the systems, keep things moving in that same kind of systematic way. They like the rules and policies, and I know just from what I'm seeing come across my email that rules and policies are changing every day, right, depending on what's going on. So really important to know that people with high conformity are going to want that. They're going to look for that. They're going to hear, listen for that. And they also appreciate a chain of command. So they want that information as much as possible to come down to them through the proper chain, or else they may feel like, what's going on? So it sets a different stage for them if they don't get the chain of command that they're used to. They're always going to go back and double check their work and decisions for sure. That's just very natural for the high conformists to want to get things perfect. And it goes into that. They want accuracy. They want accuracy of details. So as a high conformity leader, may at times get even more stuck in the need for the details and for getting things accurate. And you know, when people have to step away and work in a different environment, we have to understand that they aren't going to perform like they have every single day, maybe in the past, because of that need to get into that kind of a system and recognize what's the detail of what I'm dealing with today. So it will be different and difficult for them. So talked about this a little bit, that just the uneasiness of not having a system or process in place. Want that organization and the structure. They might be overly focused on the future and whatever's happening in the future that we don't know about. We call it worry, and people with high conformity have a tendency to do that even more so. So it's just important to recognize in yourself, are you doing that? And also, do you see your staff doing that, and how can you help support them and keep them away from that? Again, over fearful of criticism. And you know, another thing that may happen with high conformists, if they feel like they're being criticized because they're not getting enough done, or you know, whatever the case may be, that's again, they may dig in and delay things, right? Because they're needing the structure and the affirmation that they're doing things well. So something to just be aware of there. Pros for the high C, you know, they're the ones that once the processes get into place and those new rules, as I call them, they will really be the ones to want to get those out there and help people move through them and keep things going smoothly. So they'll support those new processes. So get them on the same page with you so that they have that desire to do that. And they also will be really good at holding people to a standard, and they'll still want to keep looking for ways to improve, and they'll see those errors or possible challenges that might come up when we do implement a new process. So use them as your people that you bounce something off of if you're going to implement something that's going to impact a lot of people, because they're your strength in helping identify ways to do that, to help you get that out for folks. So again, so the cons on that same side of that, because they feel the need for the systems, they may just hold on to it. Like, this is how we've always done it. We don't need to change it. And that at times can be real overwhelming to people. So it's just recognizing, am I stuck in this right now, or can I open my mind to think we've got to do it differently? Sometimes can be paralyzed in focusing on the what ifs. This is so hilarious. Last night, my husband and I were having a conversation, and he said to me probably 4 times, but what if? But what if? I'm like, wow, we got to get past that what if. Just think about, what are we doing right now? It was hilarious. He said to me, but what if? 4 times. Wow. Okay. So I clearly went, I think you're paralyzed. Can we just kind of move on here and stop thinking about the what ifs? But may have a really strong invested stance that, again, because of their belief system and how intense it can be, you know, sometimes that can just create some serious conflict and resistance for others. And so just be aware if you're just really stuck in something and can't move forward, what is that doing to those people around you? And then there's that will worry about the situation. Worry, worry, worry. Such a big word for people with high conformity. So give them, as if you're a manager or a leader, give your staff as much information as you can to help them just really feel okay with what's going on. Recommendations here for them, you know, because we like rules and we like things to stay the status quo. Always assurance of a job well done is so important for them, and the more you can say it, the better. And detailed information, can't say that enough. Just keep feeding them all the time what's happening, what changes are in place, why they're in place, so that they can understand it. And this is key. Just remember that anytime you're communicating with someone with high conformity, respect is key. And so anytime you give feedback, as long as you can give it in a really respectful way, it will be more easily and readily received in that way. So I'm just going to think right now, I'm going to open it up here in a second because I really want to hear from you all. But when we pull back from what drives us, and that's our highest trait, we all know, we all have traits that we play with, but our drivers are the ones that I just talked about right now. And sometimes we have to pull back from that driver and maybe rely on another one of our traits, or just recognize that we have to adapt it a little bit and think, you know, am I presenting a clear vision for the company and the team, even for myself even? And, you know, if I'm talking to the team and trying to get the team on the same page, do they really understand what the objective is, what I'm trying to accomplish? Do they feel like it's clear and it's mapped out so that they understand it? And do they know what the process is going forward? And are they bought into it? And so thinking about it as a leader, just know people are going to come at that from so many different ways based on who they are. But these are just some things to think about when we're thinking about our own driver and how that's impacting other people. So questions right now, just, you know, thinking about how are you managing your stress? What kind of impact is that having on others? And, you know, maybe what do you need to do in order to adjust to ensure that you're giving others what they need? Just things to think about. And we all know when we go into that stressful mode in our backup style, people will feel it, and we will see it. We'll recognize it in ourselves, and just know it's going to happen because of what's going on in our environment. Let me just give me 1 second here. I'm going to unmute all of you and hope we have no bombers. Okay, good. All right, so we're unmuted. So any comments or questions or anything else that you'd like to say or add, Sarah?
You know, I do. Just a couple of things is that, you know, when you look at each of the traits, as Melanie kind of went through those, just even think of yourself in your current role, or if you're managing people that have these different traits. So kind of, I look at it, you know, kind of want to look at it both ways. Like with that D, realize that you cannot control everything, even though you want to, but you can't control sometimes how people are feeling. You can't control where their thoughts are that day. Just let them be in their moment for that day, but kind of check yourself. Also for the E's, just, you know, don't take things personal. I mean, I can be guilty. I have to check myself in at the door sometimes and go, okay, you know what, this isn't really about me. This is about this. But just really, you know, again, kind of getting back into the check yourself. Also, that patience is, you know, making sure either if you have high patience, keep yourself in a routine, whatever your new routine looks like today. And for your employees, same thing. Make a process that works for you, your daily routine, whatever it is. If you go down the hall for lunch or go outside for lunch for 30 minutes, whatever it is that kind of gives you a break, but do that. And don't avoid. Just don't avoid when things need to be addressed, because you do, like, you know, sometimes we do step backwards. Kind of when Melanie was talking about that C, create a new system either for you or for your employees. Just create that new system, whatever it looks like, because it will go a long way. And giving those high Cs what they need, just so that they can feel very assured with what they're moving forward on, that will help on both sides. So don't expect perfection in the high Cs. Just give yourself a break for a minute. That it's not perfect. It's not going to be perfect today, and it's okay. Just give yourself a little bit of a break. So that's what I wanted to add, just on each trait, just kind of high level down the nut.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. You know, even one thing with my high patience, one of my key drivers is I like to feel productive. And the first 2 weeks, I said, I've picked every weed in the yard. I've cleaned every blind in the house. I've done everything that I can do to feel productive, you know, but because I couldn't quite get in that momentum from work, right? So I caught myself just look to the garage, everything just as a way to feel productive. And that's really big too for high patients. So, you know, as long as they're feeling productive, they're going to keep moving on. But really interesting just to see how all of this has shown up in the last few weeks. Christy, do you have anything to add or anything that you've observed?
I think it's important for us to recognize when we do go into our backup styles, or if we're feeling down. I tend to be more of an extrovert, and so being away from people, even though I'm working from home and I'm with my high school son, I miss that, and that can be a drain. And when I try to fight against it, it makes it worse. But being able to communicate it with somebody, a friend or a coworker, somebody that I trust, really helps out.
Yep.
So communicating how we feel, I think, is really important. Making sure you're communicating with the right person as well.
Yeah.
Not just
Good point.
just understanding when we're down or in our backup styles, I think, is really important. And homeschooling has definitely put me in my backup style at times because I've never wanted to homeschool before, and so.
And you still don't. Yeah, different days for sure, huh?
Yes.
Yeah, different days. Well, does anybody else on the line have a comment or a question? Not really. Okay. Very good. Well, we look forward to talking with you again on the 23rd of April. And at the same time, and we'll get another invite out for that, but we're going to talk on that webinar just about, you know, maintaining employee morale and really adapting as a leader. And it's kind of a launch from what we talked about today with just a little bit more in-depth detail. So, and, you know, a little bit more around communication and just the other styles as well, our lower traits included. So that's what we'll talk about next time on the 23rd.